Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys an old school album review. And today we're going to be looking into this album's 25th anniversary, which was yesterday, but didn't have the time to do it. But I figured why not just get it out of the way today. And as you can see below the title, today we're going to be looking into, well, one of those first bands for me that really got or just the gateway bands that really got me into like metal. And as you can see below the title, today we're going to be looking into Korn, and more specifically, we're going to be talking about their self-titled debut album, which was released in October of 1994. So yeah, this album, it's hard to believe this album is pretty much as old as me as at this point, 25 years. And Korn, for me, like I said, are one of my huge gateways into metal. And I think I remember this is actually the first album I actually owned. This actually was a hand down from my dad. I went and checked out this album and I was like, wow. And of course, Korn are probably those first, I guess, the pioneers of the whole new metal genre, which would inspire other bands like Deftones, Slipknot, Linkin Park, bands of that nature, around that time in like the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And this, for a little backstory of Korn, they formed in a year before this album came out in 1993 in Bakersfield, California. Few of the members were in another band called LAPD. Then they found a singer, Jonathan Davis, and it was around that time that Korn had basically formed. And like I said, and then of course this album is produced by Ross Robinson, one of the best producers in the whole new metal genre. And I feel like this album sort of like, especially in like the whole like 90s, there's like the whole like funk stuff like Faith No More, even like a lot of the thrash scene was probably dying off, but I feel like Korn pretty much stands out at that time being like very new and very fresh. And just lyrically, this album is just very dark, like especially like lyrically, all the shit that Jonathan Davis had went through was just even crazy, which we'll just go through in a little bit. And his vocals just really just sound really angry and just pissed off. You could just tell he has a lot to get off his chest right here. And the guitar work is just great. The first time I feel like Korn just goes down tuned to like with down tuned 7 strings. I mean, Head and Monkey pretty much a great duo with that. Pioneering sort of like the low. I think one of those first bands that got like the low tunings and stuff. And the bass playing, Fieldy's bass is pretty audible. Well, you could definitely hear it. It always sounds very clicky a little bit. It almost kind of like falls in, almost like in the kick drums, of course, then drummer David Silvera has done. Um, yeah. Yeah, so without further ado, let's just dive into the Korn self-titled debut track by track. Now, the album kicks off with the song Blind, which starts with some very quiet, cymbal tapping. Bing, and you could tell that this, right from there, it's going to start out off and it's going to go into a wild ride, especially with like a little bass lick, and then the guitars kick in and just it sort of builds up, and then Jonathan just screams one of the Korn's pretty much trademark sayings, "Are you ready?" and just boom, hits you right in the head. And it just marks a point where I've never been just more right in my life. This song just starts hurling instrumentals at you faster than a speeding bullet, and it eventually leads into like slow verses, and it's pretty slow with a quiet and simple chorus. And then it just gets a little bit faster part in the bridge, and then it just sort of like gets in the middle, and then it sort of like slows down a little bit with a little bit of a bass line from Fieldy. Overall, it's a good way to start off the album. Next song on here is Ball Tongue, and this track, unlike the first one, just blares out with raging instrumentals, and then a short little bass solo before the beginning part 2 of the instrumentals. And I really like how Korn has rather long instrumentals for the intro, because it really sets up the success of the song, and it sort of like gives you a chance to get the feeling of what the song is going to be. And the verse in the song is pretty much Jonathan sort of like talking and vocalizing behind what it could be. He's going to be the downfall of my eardrums. And you actually hear Head actually does some backing vocals. He actually pretty much screamed Ball Tongue. And right here, and that's just, yeah, and this is actually one of the first on this album that features like vulgarity with the beating in line of "How can you fucking doubt me, but not again." And just a really good song. Next song on here is Need To, and this is one of the best on this album simply for its lyrical genius. I don't expect anyone to a lesser degree of the experience with metal to understand the true power of the lyrics in this song. Words cannot attempt to describe the awesomeness of the lyrics and the instrumentals to boot. And the intro consists of like a two-part pattern of guitar, bass, and drums all leading to the verse, and the track is the first of this album to reveal the vocals at a higher level. When the chorus comes to my ear, I just nearly fell out of my chair choking on these awesome lyrics. Thanks, it's just a good song. Anyway, next song on here is Clown, and this track starts off with a little kind of like a small little sequence of like a conversation amongst the band and the producers in the studio right before recording the song. It's just a funny way to just start off the song and just boom, it sort of like builds up and then has a little bass line and just boom, hits you right in the head. It has like a 2-3 pattern of instrumentals leading to another quiet verse, but when the chorus arrives, the volume is played around with the vocals increasing and sort of like decreasing volumes. But the only little like gripe I have is like near the end of the song, the lyrics kind of like I get a little bit redundant, but that's just me. Divine, which I really want to say that this is just a filler track, but it's too good to be filler. Though this is like the shortest song on the album, clocking in around 2-minute range, it still is able to combine the basic aspects of Korn to get across the point. I mean, there's not much to say about this track other than the instrumentals get a bit boring after a while. Other than that, it's a good song. Next song on here is Faggot, which is actually kind of like spelled differently. It's Faget, and pretty much one of my favorite songs on the album, and pretty much this song is a bit longer than most of the tracks, so it gets a better chance to say that Jonathan gets all to say. And this track, Jonathan has a thing or two to say with a small select group of people, and the instrumentals in the intro are fantastic. And it just kind of like near one of the parts where it kind of like goes a little bit quiet, and then Jonathan Davis kind of like talks about the haters about talking shit, and he says, "You can suck my dick and fucking like it," which is just wow. And then moving on to Chutes and Ladders, one of the most interesting songs on here. And compared to everything we've heard before this song, I don't think this could be any more random than this. And this track sort of like is basically about hidden violence messages, like hidden in like nursery rhymes. But it starts off with like Jonathan Davis bringing out sort of like his bagpipes. One of the first time we hear bagpipes in metal, which is kind of weird, but overall it's a good song. It's just a really good song. Has a little bit of a creepiness to it, especially like with the lyrics, like how the way like Jonathan then sings like the nursery rhymes just sounds creepy to me. It's a pretty good song, and this song is one of the most longest intros into Korn to this date. Next song is Predictable, which this song doesn't seem to be very well known. I can't even speak today, sorry. This song doesn't seem to be very well known on this album. I can't really think of a whole lot to say about this song. It kicks off with a quiet intro, then a bit louder towards the start of the first verse. And the chorus of this track, it almost kind of reminds you a little bit of Blind, just short and echoing. And after the second chorus, there's a pretty good outro for the final verse. Basically just a quiet hitting the snare and quite thunderous bass line. Fake, again, which is not similar to Predictable, not a very well-known song. I personally, however, like this song a lot. And the theme of this song is basically people not being honest with themselves, hypocrites, if you will, if you take over the large portion of Korn's songs. And this song is longer than I would expect it to be. What really catches my ear in this song is Jonathan's trying to get more involved with his voice. I mean, we've got a melodic voice, heavy voice, high voice, low voice, etc. Lies, which this to me is kind of like a filler similar to like Divine, but a filler nonetheless. But it's a good one. The track is short, redundant, and I don't think anyone knows what it means. And the verse is rather interesting with its guitars or whatever distortion that they're doing. And I actually like how in the chorus like Head actually does vocals, like singing, "Do you ever feel inside your things? Think about your lies, think about your inner fears," or something along that nature. Next song is called Helmet in the Bush, which starts off with a little bit of an intro with like, I don't know, it's off a phone call. But when I first heard this song, I had no idea what the title was about, but now I do. Basically, this song is about the height of Jonathan's fear when he was doing speed, and the most notable side effect of the drug is that it reduces the size of your genitals. It just sounds funny to me. Which is what Helmet in the Bush means. And this is a very eerie track with disturbing instrumentals and vocals that almost at a whisper of desperation. And the chorus almost scares you because it hits you with what after drugs can really cause you. Hopelessness, desperation, and desire are three perfect words to describe the attitude of this song. And then we get to, wow, one of the most creepiest songs and most scariest songs I've ever heard in my life, which is the last song on the album, which is called Daddy, which, yeah, which this song is pretty much about how Jonathan Davis, when he was a kid, was molested by someone. I mean, a lot of people assume that it was his parents, but it's actually about like a babysitter, and he told his parents what happened, and they didn't believe him at the time, which was kind of fucked up. But this song was sort of like Jonathan's way of just letting it all go. And technically, this is the longest track of this album, which is pretty much like 7 minutes long. Which after a while, it's just, I don't know. It's just one of the most scariest songs on here. Normally, if I listen to this album, I just skip that song entirely. It's just it just gives me chills every time I hear it. It just like has some really good instrumentals, like the bass line on after like the little like nursery, like the intro is pretty good before going into the actual song. But after like the 5 minutes or so, it just, Jonathan Davis just pretty much starts breaking down and crying, which is and just gets really angry. And then after a while you hear like a door close, pretty much Jonathan leaving, while the band sort of like near the end where all the band sort of like does his instrumentals. Can't even speak today. But then after a while, it has like 5 minutes of silence, and then it actually has a hidden track, which is pretty much a recording of two people arguing over a vacuum cleaner parts or something, which is kind of like a little funny way to just sort of like forget like the creepiness of the song. From what I heard, this was actually the recording of a couple arguing was like a band that the band found on the tape of the floor of the studio, and they just decided to add it on to the last song. But yeah, so overall, Korn pretty much started a whole new trend, especially around the time of 1994 with their debut album. It's a classic album, pretty much one of the darkest albums, and a little bit of a creepy song like we talked about with Daddy. So overall, if I had to give this album a score, I'm going to give this probably a solid 9 out of 10. So yep, that's my review of Korn's self-titled debut album, guys. And it was also great seeing them play this album live a few years ago in 2015. So if anybody was there, just let me know how you feel about that. And also let me know what you think of this album, or when you first heard it. And I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.